Howdy and welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. I'm Jerry Snyder. As an elite level athlete, owner of All In Health and Wellness, and author of the book Confidence Through Health, my goal is to help you achieve your goals and dreams using health as the conduit to get there. I want to say thank you to Social Media Cowboys for sponsoring this week's episode of the Confidence Through Health podcast. If you need help with a website, if you need social media needs for your business, if you need help with AdWords, SEO, all those things that you know you should be doing but you are too busy to do or you're too confused about, they are the experts that you need in your corner. If you're interested in launching a podcast such as mine, they help me edit my podcast and do a fantastic job making sure that all of the technical side of it is handled and we launch a nice, neat, edited podcast episode each week. So I want to thank Social Media Cowboys for their continued sponsorship of the Confidence Through Health podcast. You can find them at socialmediacowboys.com, or you can find them as well with other sponsors at confidencethroughhealth.com. Howdy and welcome back to the Confidence Through Health podcast. This is Jerry Snyder, your host. And today in episode 126, I am getting back into interviewing people. It's been a long time since I've been able to do that, and starting that back up. And so hopefully you will enjoy this conversation I had with Dan Voss. He is, as he tells you, he is working on getting certified in breathwork. And we talk about what breathwork is. I've done an episode before, a little bit on the importance of breathing. We get into more the technique, more why it's important, why, how it's going to help you, not just with better breathing, but better lifestyle. How is it going to actually help you with your lifestyle and what that means? And we talk about how you can get involved in that and how you can learn how to breathe better and improve your health and your lifestyle through doing that. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Dan Voss. Well, thanks, Dan, for being on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Absolutely, Jerry. I appreciate you having me on, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, so am I. I know I've done a couple of podcasts just by myself trying to explain breathing and the importance, which obviously I think everybody knows if you stop breathing, you stop. Like existence stops, right? Pretty quickly. But there's so much more to how it affects your health. And I know that's what you've been getting into with breathwork techniques and how it can help you with your stress levels and all the different areas of your life. So if you would just tell us a little bit about how you got into it, why it interests you to go down that path.
Yeah. Wow. Really so much there in terms of how I got into the space and how it's improving my life and my health. I first got into an intentional breathing practice and understanding what breath work is through the Wim Hof method, which is pretty common for those of us that are in the breathwork community, is being introduced to the Wim Hof method, understanding the practice. And if you really look at what that method is, it's a pretty basic practice, even though it is a bit complex when you look at the science. But the actual intention of breathing the Wim Hof method is really pretty simple. It's 30 to 40 deep breaths. You do a breath retention or breath hold, for anywhere from a minute. Sometimes you can get up to around 3 minutes of holding your breath, which most people are really surprised by when they hear that for the first time. They're like, "Hold on, you're telling me I can hold my breath for 2 minutes?" And then you take them through the practice, and they're shocked that they held their breath for 2 minutes. So, so that was really the genesis for me, was it being introduced through the Wim Hof method. And I learned about Wim through different podcasts that I was listening to and hearing his story and hearing the practice and all of the benefits from it, and realizing, wow, this is something I need to learn more about and add into my lifestyle. So I kind of went into a deep dive around Wim Hof method and went to a couple workshops. And mind you, this was all the beginning of COVID, where there's already so much stress and so much going on in life and in the world, and a lot of anxiety and personal things for myself and realizing like, whoa, I can use the power of my breath to change how I feel, literally alter my state of consciousness.
Right.
And from there, once I had those first few experiences of breathing on my own through the Wim Hof app, and then going to a couple workshops, being in a group setting, and realizing the power of breathing in a group setting, feeding off each other's energy, that emotional aspect was really profound. It was a really profound experience for me. So yeah, from there, I decided to really kind of dive in deeper into breathing as a practice. And simultaneously, I was already talking about a lot of these topics on my own podcast, and realized, okay, that's the direction I really want to go in terms of my career,
right?
My lifestyle, which is cold exposure, breath work, plant medicine. So that's really the core of my current podcast and the content I put out.
Right.
And then simultaneously, I'm also in a certification program right now with a group in San Diego called Our Breath Collective. And like I said earlier, a lot of people that get into this breath space, they start off with Wim Hof. It's pretty common kind of stepping stone.
Right.
But these guys, they start off with Wim Hof, and then they realized, wow, there's so much more here when it comes to using our breath as a tool outside of the Wim Hof method. Even though it's a really effective method, there's much more here. There's much more that has been around for hundreds of years, really thousands of years, going back to Eastern culture, and really studying that and diving deep into it and understanding the physiology of it, the science behind it, how it works, why we feel better, why we feel more energized, or why we're able to use our breath, and what's going on there to downregulate and to calm down and to de-stress. So I'm having a blast with it in terms of this certification program, talking about it on my own podcast, and just being a student. That's what's the best part about all of this, is that there's so much out there. There's so much information. There's tons of resources. There's tons of certification programs. I mean, you could spend all day long just learning about breath work and intentional breathing, and the science behind it. And that's fun. It's great to be the student, but it's also great to have real life application. Go out there and practice it on your own and make it a part of your daily regimen and teach it to others.
Right.
This past weekend, I was at a Wim Hof workshop in New Mexico, helping out a friend who's a recent Wim Hof instructor certification member, and just being a part of that leadership role and that teacher role, and giving this gift of our breath to people that are very new to it. They might have some sort of experience, but for the most part, they're really new.
Right. And
then hearing their stories of how it's impacting their life, it's like, gosh, this is so cool. So yeah, I'm super passionate about it, if you can't tell by that long-winded answer.
Well, and you said something that you described it as the power of your breath. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand, how powerful, I mean, like I said, obviously you have to breathe to live, but like how much more is involved in your breath and how powerful it is for, you touched on, your stress level, your emotions, what can you tell us about like what you've learned about, like, because I know I'm sure, because with most learning of things is like you start learning it, but then you like fall back to old habits, and you're like, why do I feel like this? And you're like, oh, I'm not practicing, right?
It's such a great, such a
great
point.
Did you have experiences like that? And can you like touch on like, oh yeah, I fell into the trap?
Yeah, absolutely. A few things I'd like to touch on there. In terms of the power of our breath, I think the first piece there is awareness. Yeah. And I have conversations with a lot of people around intentional breathing and how we can use our breath to improve our lifestyles, our health. And for people that are really new to this space, they almost kind of like laugh at you or scoff. They're like, breath work or intentional breathing, like what does that even mean? I know how to breathe. Why do I need to learn how to breathe? I've been doing it my whole life. I've been doing it since I like literally was first born. And then you explain to them about some of these practices and their applications and the benefits of it and what you can use, how you can use it throughout your day. And then they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right. Actually improving your sleep. Cool. I want to learn more about that. it can improve your physical performance. In sports, you're big into working with athletes. Like, there's a lot there to improve your physical performance. When you think about when you run, when you lift weights, any type of exercise, any type of movement, yoga, breath is so important into all of that. So that would be the first piece in terms of the power of the breath, is I think being aware of it and connecting with it.
Right.
And that might sound a bit woo-woo in terms of like, I'm going to connect with my breath. But once you learn how to do that, it makes sense. For people who are listening right now, you're probably in one of two camps. You're probably either listening to this and saying like, what the heck is this guy talking about, connecting with his breath? Or you've experienced it yourself and you're probably like, yeah, I know exactly what that means. So the first piece I think is awareness, and then just doing it, doing it on a consistent basis, even if it's 5 minutes throughout the day. We have, I think it's the numbers around 21 or 22,000 breaths that we take every day.
Oh, wow.
So I always try to encourage people, just be aware of one of those deep breaths.
Right.
How many of us go throughout our whole day? We just go. We have meetings, we have work, we have pick up the kids, drop them off at practice, do this, go grocery shopping. Oh, I got to do laundry. Oh, I forgot to pay that bill. We just go. 22,000 breaths on average a day. What if we could just be aware of one of them, right? Like literally just breathe in and breathe out.
You
can do that while you're driving. You can do that while you're standing in the grocery store, waiting in line at the bank, whatever it is, having a conversation. Even during this conversation, Jerry, like as we're talking, I'm listening to you or I'm talking, slow the breath down. It's a beautiful thing. So that's what kind of a bit of what I mean by the power of the breath. There's so much more there. And then in terms of making a part of your lifestyle, like I said, it's that daily practice. And once you do it on a consistent basis and it becomes a part of who you are, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying before about connecting with your breath, being aware of it, understanding its real power. Then you kind of just get into these habits of doing certain things. So a really good example is there's kind of a trend lately about mouth taping, right? So there's a really good book out right now, or it's been out for a little while, at least a year or so. It's called Breath by James Nestor. And he highly, highly recommend this to anybody listening. Either listen to the audiobook or buy his book. A fantastic book about intentional breathing, the power of our breath. He goes deep into the science, so really helping you understand what's happening on the physiological level. And much of the book talks about nasal breathing. So, and it's really cool. He even gets into the evolution of how we breathe as humans. We look at our ancestors that lived hundreds, thousands of years ago. They naturally breathe through their nose. And then over time, through our lifestyle, our hectic, way of living, and just things that we pick up over time, bad habits, we start breathing through our mouth. And a lot of people will do that as they sleep. And I was one of them. Like when I read this book for the first time, like a year ago, and then now I'm in the certification program and I'm deeply immersed into the breathwork space. You start paying attention. It's back to that awareness piece, right? You realize, oh gosh, I have been breathing through my mouth. I'm a mouth breather and not my nose. And there's so much there in terms of science, but a very simple way of looking at it is you have different passageways of how and where we can breathe. The nose is just a natural filtration system. It filters out toxins as we breathe in and out. Whereas the mouth, you don't have as much as that. And anyhow, with mouth taping for nighttime when you go to sleep, it's a great way to get into the habit of breathing through your nose as we sleep. And that can help with insomnia and so many other things in terms of sleep quality, right? So anyhow, I've been mouth taping for a while now, about a year on and off. You don't have to really do it every single night, because just about anything else, the more you do it, it becomes habit. It just becomes kind of instinctual. So once you do it a few times throughout the week, the other nights you're sleeping with your mouth closed, even if there's no tape on. So that's been a practice of mine. And it's kind of funny because I like to brag to people, at least in the last couple of years, I brag to people that I rarely get sick. And I attribute that to plenty of things, like improving my diet, focusing on better sleep. I have an intentional breathing practice now. I walk a ton with my dog. I exercise pretty much every day. And then the big piece, I think, in terms of not getting sick is cold exposure. I've been talking about Wim Hof, right? That's a big part of the method is ice baths.
Right.
And that's kind of a whole other topic of conversation in terms of how cold exposure can improve our health. And one of the big things there is improving our immune system.
Right.
And a lot of people that get into cold exposure, they'll talk about how they no longer get sick. Their allergies go away. They haven't had a cold in a while. So now that I've been practicing this for a few years, I admittedly so I brag to people like I've gotten sick like once or twice in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's profound. And the reason why I like to brag about it is because I used to get sick. I used to have a cold, just a common cold, at least once a month. And on top of that, I had allergies.
Right.
It was a very noticeable, like depleted immune system. But if you're not really learning about it and listening, you kind of know you're sick all the time, but you don't really understand.
Yeah. You don't really feel it anymore.
Yeah. You don't feel it anymore because that's all you're used to.
Yeah.
It's like, I've been sick my whole life. So now I'm just like, that's just how it is. And you don't realize there's a different way to live. You can live in a healthy state. You can live without a cold every month.
Right.
So anyhow, I like to brag. I've been, for the most part, pretty sick free, no colds for the last couple of years. And then I got a cold like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it could have been from anywhere. I mean, I was hanging out with my nephew for a whole weekend who had some cold or something. So it could have been from him, could have been from anywhere. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Point is, I did get sick and a lot of congestion. So I haven't been able to do the mouth taping.
Right.
And it's just remarkable how much of a difference I have felt from not being able to breathe through my nose. And even at night, like I just, it's been so congested. I haven't been able to breathe through the nose. Even if I try taping my mouth, I have to rip it off because I need oxygen, obviously, while I'm sleeping. And it shows so much. You know, I can tell my sleep has been depleted. My energy levels have been down. And that's just one simple practice, breathing through the nose. And I haven't been able to do that for a little while. And it really makes you realize how doing all these things improve your overall health.
Right. Well, and I was going to ask you about James Nestor's book because I read it, I guess, probably about the same time you did. It was at the beginning of last year. Yeah. And I was from an athletic standpoint, I was like, okay, I have told people like when you're running, everybody like has been told for like, seems like from the beginning of time, you breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth when you're running. Like that's just, you know, whatever rhythm you run at, but that's the way, that's the mode that's supposed to happen. And I've been running since I was in 8th grade, but playing soccer before that. And so it's like, you know, athletic all my life, never been able to breathe in my nose. Like I've always been a mouth breather.
Same.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, so I'm reading that book through. And the thing that got me was when he was talking about the difference between mouth taping and then when they did the nose taping. And so they forced to breathe out of their mouth and that's right. The decrease in everything, basically health-wise, like everything showed negative results from that. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to try. And so it was January of last year. And I was like, all right, I'm going to start running and consciously thinking about breathing through my nose and only not out my mouth, but just mouth closed, in and out through the nose. And it took, I would say it probably took 3 months before it became like habit and my running stayed consistent. Cause at first it was like, it made me slower and it was, you know, cause I'm thinking about it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. And of course, you know, snot's going everywhere cause it's all built up in there. But then my time started to get better. And I was like, okay, now I still do it on my easy days. I'll just completely breathe through my nose because it does, from a physiological standpoint, your heart rate stays lower, like your recovery's better. But I still think that there's only so fast of a pace you can go doing that because you just need oxygen. You just got to get it, you know? So when I go fast, I'm breathing in and out of my mouth and nose, both. Yeah,
absolutely.
But the cool thing is I never could do it through my nose at all. So now I'm increasing capacity. Yeah. By doing both. I love that. But then I still, like even this morning I did a hard workout. And so I was doing repetitions and So I was in and out of my mouth doing the workout, but then as I stopped to walk my recovery, it was shut the mouth, only through the nose. Heart rate goes back down, breathing like settles, body settles. I'm like, oh, this feels good. So there's definitely, and I know that there's all kinds of mechanisms in there as far as, like you said, there's the filtration system, but there's the air going through the, the capillaries and all the blood vessels and everything that's in your nose system, in there, that's also helping regulate, part of your body, blood pressure and heart rate and all those things.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's the thing that we don't necessarily realize. And the thing I'm so fascinated about right now as I'm going through my certification program is learning about all of the different breathing, the muscles and the entire system of how we breathe and how it works and how it improves our whole health. And that's a lot for most people. You don't think about that. You think you breathe, right? You breathe in, you breathe out. Right. And that's it. And then once you start learning about all of this, the diaphragm, rib cage, all of the different, the main different breathing muscles, different ways to breathe properly, breathing through your nose rather than your mouth. Right. And then, like I was kind of alluding to earlier, all of the different applications in terms of improving your physical exercise, de-stressing, having a boost in energy, better sleep, improving your immune system. And then you can go deeper in like a lot of deeper sessions that might have more emotional healing and trauma healing. Right. I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on in terms of how you can use this in your life. And that's what I want to be a part of, is to bring that to humanity and help people understand how truly powerful this can be. Right. So for somebody out there that's going, okay, you sort of piqued my interest. Like, you talked about these, the sessions where you get together and you learn the practice. So what is that like? Is it like 30 minutes and you're going to get it down? Or is it more like when I tell people that come to me for running help for the first time, I'm like, this is going to take a while because you've been doing it wrong for however long you've been alive. Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting topic. And it really, as you probably know, with the clients you work with, it depends on each person and where they're at. Right. I suppose, and it also depends on the outcome you're looking for. So if you're somebody that wants to, let's say, specifically switch how they breathe from mouth breathing to nasal breathing, I would say in a matter of days, you can have that fixed. Right. For the most part, it's not going to be necessarily 100% perfect. But for me personally, I remember going from being a full mouth breather pretty much 24/7. Most of the time I may have been breathing through my nose a little bit, but it was mostly mouth breathing. Yeah. And after a week, I was pretty much switched over to nasal breathing. And a lot of that helped with, the mouth taping. Right. So that'd be one example. Again, it could be longer for somebody that's been doing that their whole life. And they have, may have naturally a lot of congestion or sinuses. They might have some issues with sinuses. So it is very different for each person. Yeah. But in terms of an intentional breathing practice, somebody that's never really sat down and done conscious breathing, that to me is something that anybody can do. And within a 5 or 10 minute intentional breathing practice, they will understand, based on the experience that they had, how powerful it is, how meaningful it is, how much it can improve their day-to-day activity. Now, not every single person will be into it, like in terms of passion about it, and it excites them and they really want to go deeper. Yeah. Some people might have a guided session and be like, oh yeah, that was cool. Kind of made me feel better. Kind of made me feel like present in the moment, but I got a lot of stuff to do. I don't really feel like adding this into my life. Right. That's fine. I realize not every single person is going to get into this. Right. I do believe every single person can benefit from it if they really want to commit. Yeah, I think so too. So that's a big piece, is like that commitment level. I'm working with one client right now, and from the get-go, he was like, I just discovered breathwork and I know you're into the space and I want to learn everything about it. And he's been improving. He's been diving deep into it. He's listening to podcasts that I'm recommending to him and other educational resources. And we're working together on a weekly basis, breathing together. And
Yeah.
he has seen a lot of benefits in his life. And it doesn't take much. Like I said, it's really just that one intentional, guided breathing practice with someone that has done it on their own.
Right.
And it can change their whole life. I really believe breathwork and intentional breathing has the power to change lives and change the world. And I know that's a huge statement, but I relate it back to what we're seeing in this world. High levels of anxiety, depression,
right,
and stuckness, lack of focus and clarity and purpose. And we have this tool that we can tap into at any time throughout the day, in our morning to start off our day, at the end to relax and help ourselves go to sleep, before a big meeting, or you go on stage to speak and you get nervous. You want to downregulate the nervous system.
Right.
There's so many ways to apply this to your life. And I really believe anybody can pick it up, even if you've never heard of it. It's the first time you're hearing about breathwork. You can do one practice, one session, and it's enough to change your whole way of thinking around how you breathe. Right.
Well, and when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that I mentioned is because I didn't know about this space 8-10 years ago. As far as how detailed it is in breathwork, but I knew that breathing and in your rate of breathing and all that kind of that played an important piece in your health. But I remember when my daughter she was 2-3 years old, and she'd get really frustrated or angry or anxious about something and just almost start hyperventilating, just like can't control herself. And of course, at that age, it's like once it starts, it spirals. And then it's like, and instinctually, all I would do, I would just hold her and say, okay, we just need to breathe. Just slow your breathing. Just deep breaths in and out, deep breaths, hold it, let it out.
Yeah.
And she would calm right down, and she even got to the point where she would go, something would be going on and she'd be like, Daddy, I need you to hold me. I need to breathe. And I'm like, okay, good. Like, she recognized that, like, I'm going to lose control in a minute if I don't do something. And this has worked before, so let's do it again. And she still does that to this day. She's 12 and a half, and she still knows that, like, okay, just breathe. She's getting anxious about tests at school or something. I'm like, you know what to do. Just take a deep breath. Just breathe through it. It's going to be okay.
What a gift.
But I didn't know that was what was actually playing out, then, and the importance of it. But yeah, it's so evident to me that there's so many things in our lives that can be, I don't want to say fixed completely, but definitely dealt with easier.
Totally.
If we just stop and breathe for a second.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's so much there I want to touch on. First off, what you said there goes back to that awareness piece.
Right.
Your daughter's saying, I feel like I might pretty soon here, the next few seconds, if I don't do something, I'm going to totally break down.
Right.
I'm going to have a panic attack. I'm going to have this or that. So it's that ability that you have. It's like I said, what a gift. Like that is a gift you've given her that she maybe would have realized or learned at some point in her life. But the fact that she's able to do it at 12, you said she's 12?
Yeah, she's 12 now.
Yeah. My gosh, you and I would.
Oh, I would have killed
to be able to, to have that at 12 years old. Or I always think about around that age, like grammar school and high school for sports. I would have loved to have that. But what you're talking about is more like the anxiety or the panic that we all face throughout our lives.
Yeah.
To be able to have that as a kid, amazing. Like I really think there's a huge opportunity here. I know so many of my peers in this space are talking about how the ones that are in this cohort and this program that I'm in are talking about how they're really excited to use this with the younger generation.
Right.
And to bring this to schools. I mean, think about you're a father with kids in this generation.
Yeah.
about all of the crap that's going on at school, the bullying, the addiction to phones. I mean, several different types of addictions, the mental health crisis that we're facing.
Yep.
A lot of it's looking a little bleak. And the fact that we can bring this into schools and younger populations to use for so many different reasons. But the main theme there is that they have something to improve their day in some way.
Right.
So yeah, that's awesome. Awesome gift that you're giving to her. And then there was something else that I was going to talk about with that. What else did you talk about with your dog?
What you just said though, the other thing that I think is key about, like, as much as the world today is, our social media and like promoting ourselves and like only promoting the really good things, right? Like, so all you see is, and from a comparison standpoint, now you're holding yourself accountable to somebody else's 101% of their life. Breathing is something that you could, like, especially for kids in school, like they're getting anxious about tests. They can do it at their desk and nobody's going to know anything about it. Like, you can be sitting in a meeting and be really nervous and you can sit there and just start breathing differently. Nobody's going to know.
No one knows. And that's the thing. So here's one like cool little technique in terms of down regulating. I mentioned the nervous system a little bit. There's techniques to upregulate if you want more energy. That's a lot of like Wim Hof and different techniques of that style where it's like high energy, it's high oxygenation. I'd be considered upregulated. And then you have downregulated breathing. And that is really good for situations like you're talking about where you feel anxious about something. You're nervous about a test or a speech you're about to give. I gotta be honest, when I do podcasts, like even for my own podcast, before every podcast, I have a little bit of nervousness, which is good. It's really more excitement. Yeah. It means I care. It means I want it to be a good product and a good quality. Right. But I get a little nervous. And that goes for a lot of things, like certain conversations I have. So it's another application. If you're about to go into a difficult conversation with your spouse, your kids, any loved one, anyone in your life, you can do breathing, downregulated breathing to help calm those nerves and just calm down in general. So a good technique is breathing in through your nose. It can be any number you want, 2, 3, 4 seconds. Let's say 3 seconds in. So 3 seconds in through your nose and then exhale through your mouth for 6 seconds. You're doubling that time that you had on the inhale. What you're doing there is you're now breathing in. And then when you double that time of the exhale, you're raising your CO2 level. Right. And that helps, balance out the nervous system, but it helps downregulate the nervous system. So that's just one kind of fun technique. Like you said, you can do it wherever you're at. If you're sitting in the classroom, the test is about to start, just breathe in, and you can do this several times, like 3-4 times as your teacher is talking and she's passing out the test. Just literally breathe in for 3, exhale for 6. Yep. It's also great for sleep. There's different techniques around the same type of methodology, but box breathing would be a great example. Breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, holding for 4. Right. Do that 2, 3, 4 times until you feel relaxed. You can do that before sleep. I love that one for helping to fall asleep. Yeah, I did that when COVID was going on and things were getting stressful. And it was like I used to be able to just hit the pillow and fall asleep, and now I'm not. Right. And it's like, what is the problem? And it's like, okay, let's just go to breathing. And within like, usually I couldn't even get to the 3rd cycle consciously, and I'd be out. It'd just be especially when you get very focused on what you're doing, focused on the counting, focusing on the breath. And if you have to slow it down, slow it down. Like if 4 seconds is not enough for you, work your way into like 5, 6 seconds, right? 6 seconds in, 6 seconds hold, 6 out, 6 hold. Yeah. After a while, after like 3-4 rounds, you could probably move that up to like 10 seconds. And that's when you're really, really slowing things down. That's what I like to do, is like work that number up. And then, especially when I'm really dialed in, really focused on that breath and that number, that's when I usually fall asleep pretty easily. Yeah. And you had mentioned about holding your breath for like, super long. Yes. And so from a practice standpoint, like, is holding your breath better or worse, or is it just a piece of the puzzle? Is like, you need to also practice this part versus just like, we're talking about breathing in through your nose and out through your nose, but like,
The holding of your
totally.
breath, like, yeah.
Yep. So for certain techniques, it is a piece of the puzzle. What I was alluding to was with Wim Hof method. And if you're new to Wim Hof, he has a free app. So he has guided breathing exercises within that app. A number of different exercises, but his main the kind of bread and butter method is the 30 to 40 deep breaths.
Right.
And then after the final exhale, you do what's called the breath retention. That means you're breathing on at the bottom at empty when your lungs are empty. A breath suspension is when you breathe in and you're holding when your lungs are full.
Right.
So what's happening there with that specific technique is you're basically, like I said, you're doing those deep breathing, 30, 40 deep breaths. Obviously you're highly oxygenating your body.
Right.
And then when you do that breath hold, that breath retention, after just doing all that deep breathing and the oxygen levels are very high, now you're flipping the switch.
Right.
And on empty lungs, you're now raising your CO2 level. And it's basically just like a quick reset to your whole system. It's like shaking a snow globe, if you want a visual of it. And then it's just the contrast of what you were just previously doing, which was high oxygenation. So that is a big piece of the Wim Hof method is that contrast between high oxygenation and then CO2 level. Other practices like the box breathing, it's just a really nice way as you're breathing in and then you hold. It's just a great way to slow everything down.
Right.
So most of us we're over breathing. And I think in James Nestor's book in Breath, he talks about this quite a bit. A lot of people are taking very shallow breaths. We're breathing like every couple of seconds. So if you do the math, that'd be like 20 to 30 breaths a minute. And that's just throughout the day, right? Like you're like way over breathing at that point. If you're breathing every 2 seconds. Right. And I believe in that book, he talks about the ideal cadence for breathing is about the number is 5.5. So 5.5 seconds in, 5.5 seconds out. That if you do the math there, it's like 5.5 seconds per minute. So that would be what science is now showing as your kind of sweet spot for breathing cadence. So there's a lot there in terms of why and how we breathe and slowing things down. Breath holds are a part of that oftentimes with certain techniques. But then it's also nice just to like realize how much you can challenge yourself. Right. In terms of your CO2 tolerance. This goes into a lot of what you're into with running and physical performance. This is that CO2 tolerance. Yeah. And it also plays into the fact that, we often overbreathe. So much of it is kind of a moving puzzle. And that's just one of the puzzle pieces. Well, and so there's a couple of things I wanted to, first off so 5.5 breaths per minute. And I remember that from the book. And what struck me is that, so my degree's in exercise physiology, and I initially was going for working in the cardiac rehab realm, working with heart patients and stuff. And so you learned how to take blood pressure and heart rates and all the, more than that, of course, but like the vital signs. And we were looking for breathing to be somewhere between 12 and 14 breaths a minute. And that was supposed to be the standard good, rate. And it's like, that's like double what it should be, it's crazy. But that's what the medicals right now is looking at. And you come in like that and they're going like, okay, yeah, your breathing's fine. It's like, well, maybe not. But on the CO2 tolerance, one of the things that I started doing, because we have an above ground pool. So I'll probably be putting it up here in the next week or so because the weather's starting to get to where it can handle it. So typically not necessarily in the wintertime, but I leave it up in the fall almost as long as I can, late October, early November, because I'll go for a run. I'll come back, immediately strip the shoes off, jump in the pool. Yeah. So I know my heart rate's up, my breathing's fast because I just finished, and I'm talking about like within 30 to 45 seconds, I finished the run, I'm in the pool. Yeah. And then the water's pretty cold then? Not necessarily in the like July, August thing, but yeah. I mean, if
if we feel it in the next week, it's going to be pretty cold because it's still getting down to the 40s or 50s at night.
Yep.
And I'm doing this in the morning, so it's not had a chance to heat during the day.
Sure.
But yeah, in late September, October, I mean, it's almost like, whoo, is there ice in here? Because it's cold. And to go from, running and being all hot in that contrast. But what I started doing after reading that James Nestor's book was, okay, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to take a couple of deep breaths, and then I'm going to completely submerge, breathe out, and just hold it for as long as I can and just hang out. And I've noticed like the CO2 tolerance has been huge.
Yeah.
Being able to do that because it's somewhat cold exposure. It's breath holding, and it's like coming off of, and it's something obviously I've worked up to. It's not something that just, like anybody just needs to go and try tomorrow. Work up to it to see how your body reacts to it. But
that's great.
And I've probably been down at sometimes for 45 seconds to a minute and just sitting there going like, this is crazy. Like in my head going, this is crazy. I'm able to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're able to do that because you have the experience with it and the practice with it. I will say as a disclaimer, in terms of the Wim Hof breathing and really any kind of deep breathing practice, it's absolutely not recommended to do it in near body water or in water. I mean, if you're doing the breath holds because you're used to it and you've built up that tolerance, that's okay. But and specifically the Wim Hof, the deep breathing, people have passed out near water or in water, and that's definitely not safe. So that is one disclaimer I like to throw out there, is to do it while you're laying down or, in your, on your bed or something like that. But in terms of, getting into the cold after exercise, after a run, after a workout is sudden. There's, a lot of the research is showing now how great it is for muscle recovery. Right. And just to improve, there's so many benefits with cold exposure. I could go on a tangent of how many benefits there are, but great thing for post recovery. Yeah. So, one of the things that breathing goes along with, which I think is also something that's bad for, I shouldn't say bad, but it's sort of like just where we've gone as a society because of our transition into working behind a desk all day long, is just, our posture is horrible. And you alluded to this a little bit with the shallow breathing. And I think those two go hand in hand with like bad posture where you don't have any room for air to go anywhere. And obesity plays a part in that too, because it's pushing on, so people that are obese and bad posture, they've got a double whammy now when it comes to breathing. So you mentioned, with Wim Hof method, specifically laying down, but like other ways of just deep breathing. And do you recommend like a certain posture to at least get started so that it can make sure that you're getting the right benefit at the beginning? Yeah, totally. So whether it's Wim Hof or any type of deeper breathing practice, that's a longer session, anything over 15, 20 minutes, I prefer to lay down. You certainly don't have to, but it is a preference for myself. And I think for most people when you're in that longer session. Right. And then in terms of other practices, like if you're just going to be doing like 10 minutes of intentional breathing or even less, just a few minutes, and you're just sitting there, maybe it's somewhere where you don't have an opportunity to lay down or you don't have an opportunity to go wherever you want to go. And you're just sitting there at a doctor's office waiting or wherever it may be, in class, like we were talking about before a test. Yes, absolutely. Posture is a huge thing. I always like to just tell people straighten out the spine. Right. And then especially, a lot of intentional breathing practices call for breathing into your belly, into your diaphragm area. And what you're doing when you're focusing on that straight posture, straightened spine, but also like in a very relaxed position, you're just setting yourself up as a grounding mechanism. And I even like, if I'm sitting, like to have my feet planted on the floor. Right. Just be very aware of my body and how it sits right now. Yeah. And then, like I said, a lot of the intentional breathing practices that I like to focus on, and much of what's out there in the community, is focusing on breathing into your diaphragm.
Mm-hmm.
So when you focus on sitting up straight and having good posture and really utilizing every part of your body to breathe into, starting with the belly breathing and into your diaphragm,
right,
filling up your rib cage, your lower back, bringing up into your chest. I mean, that's the other thing is a lot of people don't realize, like, you can actually breathe into specific parts of your body, whether it's your chest, your diaphragm, like I just said, your rib cage, lower back.
Mm.
If you get really into it and really good at it over time, you can breathe into like lower parts of your body, like into your legs and into your feet. Sounds crazy, but when you really focus, you can do it.
Yeah.
And having that focus on good posture is just a great way to set yourself up for success. So yes, most breathing practices that are sitting, I always tell people in the beginning, get in comfortable position, straighten your spine, and then we go from there. And then, a lot of those deeper practices, it's laying down recommended, really more for comfortability reasons, but also it helps, I think, open up all of your breathing muscles.
Right.
When you're doing that deep breathing and you're breathing in, especially Wim Hof, where it's like breathe into your belly, then up into your chest. He always says like a wave. Like you visualize a wave going up and down your belly, chest, up into your head, out. Okay. That's much easier to do when you're laying down than sitting.
Yeah, I can imagine. And so from an apprehension standpoint, somebody comes to a session and they're like, not really certain what's going to happen. They're just, their interest is piqued a little bit. I would imagine somebody's going to come in and go like, am I going to fall asleep? Am I going to get that relaxed? Am I going to is that something that could happen? Like
it has, depending on where you're at in your day, if you're pretty sleepy, people have fallen asleep. In terms of deeper breathing practices, like really deep sessions, there is a possibility of passing out. And that's why it's so important from a safety standpoint to have somebody there that knows what they're doing and is an expert in the field and has practice as a facilitator.
Right.
Like this past weekend, like I was saying at the Wim Hof workshop, I was there as an assistant. So we had the certified instructor, and then I was there as an assistant to just basically walk around. There's a group of 15 people. Everyone was laying down at the yoga studio. Luckily, nobody, got to the point where they passed out or fainted or had any kind of major reaction, but it's very common. 99% of the time, there's very little to ever worry about in terms of safety and health. It's really just more of like a reaction to the deep breathing. But that, like I said, is when you get into really deep breathing. So a lot of what I do with clients is really just more around like 10, 15 minute sessions. And depending on what type of breathing style we're doing, the upregulated breathing, you don't have any worry about falling asleep because you're doing the opposite there. You're actually delivering more energy into your body. Right. And then even if it is downregulated breathing to help you calm down and slow things down, if it's a smaller session, you're likely not going to fall asleep, but you will get in a very relaxed state. Yeah.
So as far as the passing out piece, is there a link there? I'm thinking from a physiological standpoint, is there a link there from like the amount of stress someone has and then their body just goes, enough, I've had it? Like,
it's a great question. I honestly couldn't answer that without researching that more. I'm sure there are theories around that in terms of a stress level. I do know personally for myself, like based on where I'm at, and this kind of goes too with the cold exposure, where I'm at in life. Like if I'm in a high state of stress, it's remarkable how much I feel that when I go into a breathing session or I go into an ice bath. You can just feel that stress of whatever it may be from the last week, from work, from finances, from your spouse, whatever it may be, kids being crazy for the last week.
Right.
If I'm in a high state of stress for that last week or so, and I haven't done an ice bath in a little while, or I haven't done breathing, like I mentioned too, I had a lot of congestion, so I haven't really been doing my normal breathing practices.
Right.
You feel that build up. And then when you get into a session and you can let that all go, absolutely. It's noticeable. But to answer your question about the connection between, let's say, your current state of stress, and let's say passing out while you're breathing. That is something I would have to do a little more research on. I'm sure there's theory out there with it, with that connection.
Yeah. It sounds like there should be some sort of connection there. Maybe not the stress that you're showing to anybody, but that just shows that the level of internal stress that you've got going on, that your nervous system just finally says, hey, you're doing two conflicting things here.
Yeah.
So we're going to shut down.
Yeah. And it's also amazing in terms of different breathing sessions that you have. Every one is different, especially when you get into deeper breathing. Like even at this retreat, we had a breath session on the first day on Saturday, and then another one the next day on Sunday. A lot of people are talking about how the first experience was so much different than the second experience, whether it was more blissful or less, or they got more out of it or less, depending on the person and depending on the day.
Right.
It was so interesting to hear feedback from different people, but I also understood, because I've been there myself, where it's like every time you go into a breathing session, it's a bit different. And a lot of that I think has to do with where you're at with stress, where your mind is. If your mind is racing, it might be harder to go deeper. Maybe you have some actual physical pain that's showing up.
Yeah. So
there's tons of variables in terms of that outcome and what your experience is like session by session. Yeah.
So how often, and this may be also to the person and sort of what they're dealing with, but how often, is it like a once a day practice and you can, you'll be all right? Or is it like, once a week, or like, what's the like the status quo of like, okay, you just need to stay in this range to maintain?
Yeah. It's like anything else. The more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. So for me, it is now a daily practice where I spend at least 5 minutes every day focusing on my breath. And that could be just different techniques that I now am aware of. It could be through an app. Like I mentioned, there's a Wim Hof app. There's a few others that I like. There's the program that I'm getting my certification through. They have daily breath sessions that are about 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
They have a membership model. So once membership business model. So once you're a member, then you have access to all those breath sessions each morning, 15 minutes. You can go back, watch all the recordings. So yes, I would say for most people that are interested in this, I recommend making it part of your daily routine, just because there's so many benefits to it. Right. Such a great way to start your day. And at least for me, I think most people I talk to, once you get into it, it's kind of hard to neglect it. Right. Again, that's been my experience. It might be a little bit different for other people, but most people I know that get into this space, they're like, gosh, this makes me feel so much better. It's such a good way to start the day. It's a good way to end the day. I can't imagine not having it a part of my daily routine. And it's a little bit of work in terms of, there's a reason why it's called breath work, even though I don't really love that term. I would prefer like breath play or intentional breathing, conscious breathing. But it is a little bit of work in the sense that you have to commit a little bit of time. It is a workout for your body. There is a lot of movement there in terms of how you breathe. You're really breathing into a lot of different parts of your body. But in terms of making it a practice that you do on a daily basis and making it a habit, I find it much easier. You probably won't like me saying this because I know you're a big exercise guy, but I find it much easier to make it a habit, breathing every day, rather than, exercising, going to the gym every day. There's just that barrier of entry that gets removed. I mean, all you have to do is, lay there and breathe. Go inward. Anybody can do that, really. So I would recommend making it a part of your daily practice. If you don't hit every day, that's fine. There are days I miss. Now with the longer sessions, let's say like Wim Hof or Tumo, like really deep breathing, where you do it for 20, 30 minutes, even sometimes an hour. I mean, I've done breath sessions that are like an hour and a half, and those are really impactful. Wow. Those are like oftentimes very emotional. Sure. Trauma might come up. I might have visions about who I want to become, like where I'm supposed to be at in life. Like you can go deep into some of those longer sessions. That I wouldn't recommend doing every day. You really don't want to overdo it. And like, it's like anything else. Like if you work out too much every day, your body's going to feel it. Same thing with breathing. You really don't want to be doing like deep Wim Hof breathing every single day. I think some people probably do, and a lot of people in that community might not like me saying that, but I just try to be conscious of not overdoing certain things.
Right.
And when it comes to sustainability and doing this for a long-term practice, I'd rather tap in like 5 minutes a day, rather than get like super crazy and do it half hour to an hour every day.
Right.
And really make that longer practice, those longer sessions, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, whenever I feel it. And that's the other thing is like, it goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, is connecting to your breath and making this an intentional practice and a part of your lifestyle and who you are and what you do. The more you do it, the more you understand how it improves your health.
Right.
And the more you do it, the more you understand, oh, I can use this for certain reasons. And then the more you do it, you realize, oh, I can use this when I feel called to it. When I feel like I'm super stressed out, I just go right into breathing. Right. And it's like anything else. The more you do it, the more you practice, the better you get at it, the more it becomes who you are and what you're about. Yeah. And then it just becomes kind of intuitive. And you don't have to think about like, oh, I checked it off the list today. Oh, I did my 10 minutes today. It's like, it shouldn't be a chore. It should be something that you get to do, something that calls you that day or that week. Right.
Well, it may have been in Nestor's book. I may have researched it somewhere else, but breathing is a workout, like you said, and it's been proven because like you actually will burn if you consciously breathe and go through a routine. Whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, you do increase your calorie expenditure. Like you're burning more calories.
Absolutely.
Through focused breathing, and so it is actually a way to help with your weight control, totally able to do that. So it may not be as high up the list as far as, other things that are out there and potential to be able to do that. But it is definitely something that's helping regulate all the systems in your body.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people don't realize too, in terms of it being a type of workout, is like I enjoy a lot of the downregulated breathing just because I'm a naturally pretty energetic person. And even though like the way I talk is pretty like chill and like calm, right? My energy internally is still pretty high, and I get pretty angsty. I get pretty reactive. Not necessarily anymore, but in the past I was pretty quick to get angry and just like quick reaction. And that's why I appreciate that downregulated breathing so much, is that using it as a tool to just chill out when I need it. But a lot of people I work with that are a little bit more on that chill side naturally, they appreciate that upregulated breathing. And one of my clients was a couple weeks ago, he was like looking at his wearable. I don't know if it was an Apple Watch or some sort of wrist wearable, and it's looking at his heart rate. And he was like, oh my God, I can't believe like how much just by breathing, like going through our breathing session here, raised my heart rate. I can't remember what the number was, but it was, I could see like the light bulb go off his head. He realized it was a form of workout. Right. When you don't commonly think of breathing as a workout. So yeah, it's really fascinating.
Well, most people don't think of breathing at all. Like they just do it, Exactly. And it's just like, and then one day you have a problem and you can't breathe as well as you used to. And, it's just like anything else with your body that, like you said, as far as becoming a habit, if you do it more, you're going to find all the benefits of it. But if you don't do it like you're supposed to do it, then one day you're going to go, why is this not functioning the way it's supposed to anymore?
That's right. It's so true. Yeah.
So, we've been going for a while and I want to respect your time, but how can my listeners like get a hold of you, follow you, get in touch with you? Like how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your time, Jay. It's been such a great conversation. Yeah. Really enjoyed speaking with you, and something I'm passionate about. Where people can find me, I'm social. I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is dan.voss. They can always, reach out to me through that messaging platform to ask questions or connect. Right. I always love meeting new people. So Instagram is a great place. I have a website. So my company's called Nova Now. where we focus on obviously breath work. I work with a lot of clients one-on-one. I work in group settings. And I'm just starting to get into working with companies at whether it's their company wellness retreat or just coming into their office for like a wellness day to offer this as a resource. So I work with group settings. That website is novanow.com. Sorry, novanow.co.
Okay.
So novanow.co.
Okay.
The .com was already taken. And then another part of my business is around life coaching and transformational coaching, specifically with emotional health, mindset, behavior change, improving your relationships.
Okay.
And what I love to do is bring in the breath work into facilitating all those areas. So how can we use our breath to manage our emotions?
Right.
How can we use our breath to not necessarily control our thoughts, but at least be aware of them? Now, if you're somebody that often complains, like what if you started take a deep breath in, deep breath out? Like, oh man, I just totally complained, or I just totally had a negative thought. Like I just quickly reacted in a way where I was just like, F you to that person, or screw this, or like whatever negative thought we have, or judgmental thought about somebody. How can we use our breath to just slow things down?
Right.
Be aware of our thoughts and our mindset and how we feel, the emotions that show up, how to resolve some of those negative or destructive emotions.
Right.
And then using all of that to look at how we can improve our relationships and things like spirituality and how we want to show up in the world.
Right.
So that's the work I do with my clients through breath work and then that transformational coaching.
Oh, that's awesome. And we've known each other for a year or two, something like that. And to see where you are moving in your, it's just amazing to see how it's coming out and growing. And you found your purpose. You know what I mean? Like you know what you want now, and and it shows, and it's just great, and just keep doing it. I mean, I'm so proud of you. Just keep doing it. Just keep putting it out there, because it just like they say, it takes a village to raise a kid. Like it takes a huge community to try and stop the trends that we've got going on that are unhealthy and move them in the right direction. So keep doing it.
I love the way you said that. Just on a final note is, it's very easy in life and in business to get competitive and look at your peers that are in the same space as like, oh, they're another breathwork coach, or they're another life coach, or they're going to take business away from me, or we're competitors. And what's so cool about this space, and I'm sure there's a little bit of that mentality, but what I pick up on, I think it is pretty prevalent in the health space, is that we are a community that we're on the same team, with the same goal, the same mission to, like you said, reverse a lot of these trends that are destructive or unhealthy, or ways that we just don't want to be showing up as individuals and as a society. And I just love that we're able to take a team approach to work together, to find solutions, to bring this to the masses and have real impact. So that's a part of what I want to be a part of. And I appreciate you acknowledging that.
Yep. So it's been great talking with you.
Well, you too, Jerry. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for checking out the All in Health and Wellness Confidence Through Health podcast. Our goal is to use health as a conduit to help you reach your goals in life.
A little lighter than me. I'm about to black out. Her grip is getting tighter on me. I think I like it deep inside. I feel the fire in me. She like the milky, see me cream into the coffee to me. She got soul in her sway.